Are you excited for spring? I know I am. So in celebration of that, I have compiled my top 10 best spring DIY decor ideas. So let's get started. Our first spring and Easter DIY, we are going to be making a bunny shape cutting board. I'm going to be making my bunny cutting board out of some scrap pine wood. This is not really food grade. Mine's for more decorative purposes than actual use. If you want to use yours for food grade purposes, some hardwoods you might want to consider are maple or teak, walnut, or bamboo. I even had the idea of getting an actual cutting board and using that to cut your bunny shape out of. I don't need mine to be food grade. This is just to add a little fun into my kitchen. And so I'm just going to use up some scrap wood. So this is free to me. And I have a free printable. It's a little bit bigger than the 8.5 by 11, so we're gonna kind of have to match it up, and I'll put a link for that in the description box below if you're interested in using it. The first thing we're gonna do is take out some graphite paper, and we are going to trace this image onto our wood. It's gonna be a pretty simple outline. We're gonna just trace that all the way around. But now that we've traced it onto the board, now we're gonna need a jigsaw, and we're gonna go outside and get powerful. We are about to get powerful, and I don't want you to be nervous because this is actually the perfect starter project if you've never worked with a jigsaw. So this is a jigsaw, and I don't want you to be scared by it. You just pull the handle, and it goes. So we have our bunny all traced onto our wood, and we're ready to cut it out. We're gonna take some precautions. I've got some earplugs because it gets kind of loud. There we go, we're gonna stick those in. And then of course, we're gonna protect our eyes with eyewear. Now you can also take a step further and put on a face mask if you'd like. My husband says that safe is sexy. We're gonna just clamp this down, and we can just kind of rotate it around as we cut. But if we clamp it into place, it will just kind of be more secure. I just don't want it to move around, so making sure it's extra secure. And you can see I didn't go in and do this cut yet because we're gonna cut it like that, and then we'll come back in and get that later. So you can see that we've got this going, and we've just done that by like cutting relief cuts, cutting one direction, then coming back in the other way. And if there's any of this little roughness here, we're gonna come back and hit this with a sander and sand it really good. So we've got one side of the bunny, and that looks pretty good. So then we'll just kind of undo this and spin it around, and we'll do the top part here. Okay, so this is gonna be a little tricky, but not crazy tricky, so. There we go, look at that. This is going good, I love it. Now that we've cut off this relief cut, we can come back in the other direction. Just this little section and we're done. We survived. Look at that. So it was just lots of little relief cuts here and there. I could have probably drilled some pilot holes with a drill, but we got the job done without doing that. But we've got our bunny, and it is cute. Now you could make these bunnies and use them as decor elsewhere, but we have a little roughness on the edges that I want to work out, and it's a little rough on the front and the back. So I'm going to give this a really good sanding with my palm sander, and we're going to try to take off some of these sharp corners, and then we're gonna get it ready for the next part. But I am just loving this bunny, it's so cute. So all in all, I spent about 20 minutes cutting out my bunny and sanding it to smooth. So that's not too long at all. Garbage truck. Shh, don't you know I'm filming? There's always something going on. Always noise. Now I just want to add a little extra to this cutting board. So we are going to make a stencil with our Cricut machine that says Happy Easter. You could do this one of two ways, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my scorch marker and fill in my stencil. And then I'm going to take out my heat gun and burn the image into my cutting board. And if you don't have a heat gun or a scorch marker, another thing that I thought you could do is take your stencil and fill it in with some antiquing wax. That kind of just makes it more of like a stained effect rather than painted or something like that. I just thought that would look more appropriate on a cutting board. One thing to be aware of when using a heat gun on pine is that the heat will cause the board to weep out sap. So don't be alarmed by this. This is normal. And it has not happened to me when using actual cutting boards if you decide to go down that route. You can kind of sand off the sap a little bit when it's cooled down. Now, for this next part, I keep going back and forth whether I'm glad I did this or not in the end. But at this point, I decide to darken up the wood by using some antiquing wax. And the reason I did this was so that it would blend in better with my other cutting boards. But it really does look cute, high contrast. So if you like this look, just leave it in its natural state and maybe put a sealer on it. I think it would look really good like that, but after I get the antiquing wax on, I just kind of sand it down a little bit all over and on the edges, and that's it. In the end, I'm glad I did use the antiquing wax because it really does blend well with my other wood pieces. I think this is a subtle yet classy way to bring in a holiday without being too overly thematic. This little cutting board cost me next to nothing, but brings in such Easter charm to my kitchen area. It is so cute and it actually makes me smile. My next spring DIY is I'm going to be working with a medium that I have never worked with before. We're going to be using this lawn bag to create a cement planter. I've never worked with cement in my life, so this could get a little dicey. We'll see. I've had this kind of bucket floating around outside for a while. If it gets totally trashed in this process, I'm not gonna lose any sleep over it. I've had to actually duct tape it in a couple of spots because there was cracks and I didn't want concrete to leak through, and so I used some Gorilla Tape. And then of course we sewed down this bag so that there's only like a couple of inches all the way around. We do not want like 100-pound planter. That just would not work. And so hopefully we've got it the good size now. I have no idea how this is gonna go, but I have high hopes. All right, so we're gonna take this bucket and we're gonna put it on the ground below this bag. I better put some cardboard down. I'm also gonna put on gloves because just touching this cement mixture, my fingers are a little irritated, so we don't want that. So I'm gonna put gloves on and we're gonna crack open the sand mix. I'm really hoping this turns out. Shh, I'm filming. Those are called sandhill cranes, and they are very noisy sometimes. Apparently they don't know I'm filming a YouTube show here. And I just got this cheap shovel at Dollar Tree because I figure I could toss it when I'm done. And I've got water, and we're just supposed to mix until it kind of looks like oatmeal, apparently. And we're gonna mix it. And I can already tell this is not going to be nearly enough. I think I need a whole lot more. I feel like this is like a grown-up version of making mud pies. Adult mud pies. Mix, mix, mix. This is a good workout. Okay, that's about as close to oatmeal as I think we can get. I don't think that I fully explained what look I'm going for. I saw this inspiration photo and I was like, that is really cool looking. I want to try to get that look, but there was no instructions, so I'm just flying by the seat of my pants. Now, ideally, I'd probably just get like a rice bag or a burlap sack and do this planter, but this is what we're working with, a mystery challenge. I got my cooking spray here, and we're gonna spray the inside of the bag and the outside of this. I hope that helps. We'll just kind of rub it together. And then we're also gonna spray down this. I'm hoping this helps kind of release it when we're done. I'm gonna put about 2 inches on the bottom. And I hope this is, again, the right consistency. Mud pies. I don't know if this is gonna work. I really hope it does. Now we're gonna set this in. We're gonna try to center this, just kind of trying to evenly distribute this. This might be my first epic fail. I don't know. There's those pesky springs. They're cheering me on. So I'm going to sacrifice this thing to the cause here because I feel like it might make our lives a little bit easier. With one last stitch effort, I'm gonna finish off the bag. And one of the things on that was that there was a decorative rope and it was cinched in like a bag would be. So I'm gonna go ahead and just take my big rope here and tie it off and see if that helps hold it up a little bit and if I can shape it around that or not. I believe this will be the front. We will cinch the rope. Oh, I just got it all over my face. Now that we've got that rope there, I'm hoping that we can kind of shape it like the bag that we're trying to get. I'm just kind of massaging it up. All right, at this point, I'm not feeling very confident, to be honest with you, but we're just gonna let it dry and hope for a small miracle that it turns out and it looks amazing. I've let this sit for like 36 hours and we are going to disassemble and see what it looks like. I don't have high hopes. We'll see though. I am so surprised. It actually turned out, and I think it's really, really cute. I think we're gonna be okay. Whew. So we've got a couple of loose fibers here that I've got some scissors and we're gonna try to trim those off. And then we're gonna let it cure a little bit longer and then we'll get a fresh rope, tie it around and plant it up with some cute flowers that I'm probably gonna kill, but we're gonna try really hard to keep alive this time. I am pleasantly surprised. To me, nothing says spring more than lilac. So for my next spring DIY, I'm going to be taking this kind of orangey crate that I picked up at a thrift store for $2 several years ago. I liked the idea of this crate, but I've always hated this kind of orangey color. But we can change this up really easy by just simply painting or staining it. And I've decided to go ahead and stain it in this Briar Smoke gel stain. Before we stain it, I'm going to remove this rope because it is also kind of in that orangey color, and if I decide I want to add a rope back into it, I can just use some regular rope. But I don't think we're going to necessarily need it because we're going to be putting a floral arrangement in it. So I'm not quite sure what happened to the footage of me staining this in the Briar Smoke gel stain. I don't know if I missed hitting record or what happened exactly, but I think that that process is pretty self-explanatory, and so I hope you will forgive me in that error. After I stained it, then I let it dry overnight, but you don't necessarily need to do that. You could probably just wait a few hours. And then I always just go back over it and kind of wipe off the excess with a rag or a towel. And I sanded it down to kind of give it more of a time-worn look. Now, it usually takes at least a day or two for the gel stain to fully cure. So make sure you keep that in mind and have something underneath it until you know that it's completely dry before placing it onto something that it might stain or damage. And then once we have this stained, I thought it would look really cute to add a fresh flower market on the front of our crate in a black chalk paint. And we're just gonna take another Cricut stencil and we are going to just stencil that on. Now, once you have your stencil all ready to go, just place it on the front of your crate. Now, if you've watched my channel for a while, you know that I typically at this point will seal all of the edges to prevent bleeding. But I'm not as concerned this time around because we are going to be going for more of a rustic look, and I'm going to sand it off a little bit afterwards anyway. So I just very carefully pounce on black ink chalk paint onto the stencil. And once it's dry, I peel back the stencil and then I sand it down just a bit. And then I place some floral foam in the center, but I don't even tape it into place because it was the perfect size that actually the crate itself put some pressure on the side, and I may want to use this for something else in the future. So now for our fresh flower market crate, we need some flowers in it. I actually picked these ones up at the Dollar Tree and I was surprised at how nice these looked. I'm really fussy when it comes to the Dollar Tree. I am really picky and choosy, but I really liked these lilacs. Now this is just a simple arrangement and kind of just doing a dome shape here and trying to make it look as it would in nature. So I just evenly spread this around and then I add some springy looking greenery to kind of fill it in. I like to add the flowers first, and this just comes from my years working in a couple of different floral shops. I've seen it done where you green things up first and then the reverse where you put in the flowers in first and then the other greenery at the end. It makes more sense to me to add the flowers first because a lot of times what would happen is I would over green the arrangement and add more greenery than necessary, and I would have to remove some of it to fit all of the flowers in that I wanted to put as I was arranging. So this is just kind of a personal preference thing that has come from my years as a florist. And as a funny side note, I know it doesn't really have anything to do with what we're talking about here, but it's just so funny to me that I have such a terrible time with potted greenery and flowers, given the fact that I worked in a floral shop that had a nursery. But for some reason, I didn't learn anything from that because to this day, I still struggle with potted flowers. But I've learned a lot of tips from all of you who have given me wonderful advice that I might just get brave again this spring and attempt to pot flowers once again. So we'll see how that goes. Maybe I'm just partial, but I don't think Dollar Tree has ever looked so good with a thrift store crate, a little gel stain, and some help from Cricut. I have an arrangement that I think is gorgeous, so springy, and a crate that I can use for anything I want in the future. But what do you think? I'm going to be customizing some Easter eggs because I feel like you can't do spring and Easter without some kind of eggs, and I want mine to be super classy. So I picked up these plastic eggs from Michael's and they were on sale, so they were like $3.50. Now you could probably find something at the Dollar Tree. I liked these because they were already a good white color and they didn't have like a seam in the middle, you know, because they don't open. They're meant to be decorative. So I took half of these outside and stuck an extra long toothpick in the bottom and placed them on some foam and spray painted them in a black chalkboard paint. Then I took 3 of them and started to paint them in a gold acrylic paint, but because I wanted a smoother finish, ultimately I took them outside and spray painted them in a gold spray paint instead, which I didn't get on camera. Now our vinyl is ready to apply, and it's going to be kind of tricky because we're using a curved surface of the egg. So I start in the middle on the word Easter first, and I work from the center out, and then I go from top to bottom or whatever order you want to work in, but you're basically working from the center out on all of it. And you could just take your time with this and you will be fine, I promise, if you're just careful and a little bit patient. Then I took 2 of the black eggs and 2 of the white eggs and put the gold vinyl polka dots on in a random pattern all the way around, kind of doing them one at a time. I figured this was better to do it this way because our surface is going to be curved in an egg shape, and it would have been impossible to kind of just wrap it all the way around and have it work out. So we do these one at a time. Then I took a couple and I took the tip of a craft tool, and I'm not exactly sure what this tool is called, but I got it at the Dollar Tree. Or you could use a pen or a toothpick or whatever you have on hand, and you just take the tip of it and dip it into some gold paint that was similar in tone, and then dot some tiny little polka dots mimicking our larger ones just on a smaller scale. And then I let those dry on a toothpick kind of in a similar manner as we spray painted as well. Now these little Easter eggs were kind of a breakout surprise for me. I knew I would like them, but I really love these. They turned out so cute, and you can also see my little moss bunnies from a long past episode are keeping them company. I just placed them on some green Spanish moss in a glass cylinder vase, and I placed that on a flipped over gold bowl that I picked up at Ross, and I have a really cute display. I love these Easter eggs, but what do you think? So for our next DIY, I can't take credit for this idea. This is something that I saw on Pinterest, but when I saw it, I was like, oh, I have to make one of those. That's really, really cute. So I'll link my inspiration for this project in the description box below. You are going to need 2 of these garden fences to complete this project, because we are going to be cutting out 4 full sections, 1 for each side. Now I would recommend the smaller seasonal signs that are made out of MDF for this, because they are a little bit smaller than this piece and fit the garden fence perfectly. But we are working with the Hello Love sign, and it's just slightly larger. So to kind of accommodate this, we are going to cut out 4 square wood dowels for each of the corners. Now we end up using a ton of Gorilla hot glue for this project to make this happen. So be prepared for that. This is not normally my style, but it did work out in the end. I like things that feel a little bit more substantial and stable, but all of this glue that I used really made it feel stable, and basically we just hot glue this in every corner, every spot that we can. And then on the corners, I took some popsicle sticks. So I just use these to kind of hide some of the mechanics on the edges. And once it's fully assembled, we take it outside and we paint the whole thing in a black chalkboard paint, making sure to cover everything really well. I style it with a Dollar Tree hurricane vase and a candle. And then I use some lamb's ear from Walmart and some pink peonies just to kind of fill it in a little bit. And I think this looks so cute. It's so high-end looking, and we have a little over $3 into this candle holder. And it's so stunning, especially when you keep that price tag in mind. And I also think that these would make really cute wedding centerpieces. What do you think? We are going to be making this beautiful magnolia print, and to accomplish that you're going to need a piece of wood cut to 12 by 14 inches. The first thing we're going to do to this is we are going to paint it out in a white chalk paint to give us a nice blank canvas, and then we're going to let that dry. Now for this next part, I am providing you with a free printable. Isn't that pretty? I love this, and I'm so excited about it. I took this to Staples and I had it print out on ledger paper, which I believe is 11 inches by 17 inches, and this is what it looks like. So printing this out in color at Staples cost me about 78 cents. To me, that's totally worth it. It's a reversed image. They print it out on a laser printer. The color is very pungent, and that will help us in our image transfer process, which is what we're gonna do. What we're gonna be doing is cut off the excess on the top and bottom. There's a few inches on the top and the bottom that you're not gonna need. We're gonna be taking one of my favorite products, which is Liquitex. And Liquitex is a gel matte medium, and this helps us to do what's called an image transfer. And I just apply that generously, but not like super thick. We're gonna flip it over and very carefully try to center it on and place it and then smooth out all the edges. Then it's a waiting game. I let mine dry overnight, but really you could do it a little bit quicker if you like. At least 2 to 3 hours I would wait. The longer you wait, the more it will saturate your image. And now we're gonna remove it by taking some water in a bowl and taking a soft washcloth and removing very carefully the paper, and what is left behind is this beautiful image. Now, this process can make it look a little bit rustic. I'm okay with that kind of a look, but if you're very careful and particular about it, you can get a pretty crisp, clean look as well. Beautiful picture needs a frame, and we're gonna just go outside real quick and cut a simple miter frame. Okay, we want the inside of the frame to be kind of this lower profile, and the outside will be this thicker profile. This is just some trim that I get at Home Depot, and it's really inexpensive. I use it a lot for my stuff. Okay, and then we're gonna move this to a 45-degree angle. So we're just gonna cut off the tip on a 45-degree angle. So we don't need to overcomplicate this. We can keep this really simple. So long as the side pieces are the same and the top and bottom pieces are the same, everything should line up good. Let's keep it nice and simple. We're just cutting 45-degree miter cuts. Cutting a miter frame is not that hard. You can use like one of those miter boxes if you like by hand. I just like my power tools, and so I'm gonna cut it on that. Once you have one piece cut, you can use it as a pattern for the next piece. You can do this for the top and bottom pieces and for the sides. Don't you love how scientific I'm being? Let's see how we did. There we go. Then we're gonna just stain it and let that dry. And then we're gonna just attach it with some E6000 and hot glue. That should do the trick. Because our wood is pretty thin, I didn't want to shoot in nails. I think that we'll be okay with this. Nothing super complicated here, I promise. You can handle this. For less than $10, we have a pretty amazing piece of art that is beautiful and classy. And to help you get this job done, again, I will provide the link for the free printable in the description box below. Make sure you follow the directions there. It is pretty easy to do, but if you miss a step, it makes it a little bit complicated. And I really want you to get that free print. So check for the instructions and the link in the description box below. Next up, I want to make a classy Magnolia pillow cover. We are gonna sew a simple cover out of some drop cloth, and I've been working on this drop cloth for probably a couple of years. What we're gonna do is take our pillow and measure it, and then we're going to add 2.5 inches in each direction. Now, the reason we're doing this much excess is because I'm gonna show you how to do a special edge treatment to give it a more finished quality in just a second. Canvas drop cloth tears so easy, so that's what I recommend doing because you will get a nice straight line that way. Today we're going to be making an envelope style pillow cover, and so for the back we're going to need 2 pieces. So the width will stay the same, but we will need to create an overlap. So what we do to do this is we divide the pillow height in half, and then we add 3 to 4 inches to each side. I went with 4 this time around only because it worked out perfectly that way. Now that we've got our pillow squares cut out for our envelope style pillow, we're going to take the front piece and apply our image to it. And I wanted to do this first because we were going to need to iron it on, and I didn't want any weird creases in it. We are going to take this image that I designed for you, and it's got a beautiful magnolia on it, and it says bloom where you are planted. And this will be a part of that link that I've already mentioned for the art piece, so they will both be in the same location to keep it simple for you. And you are going to need some special image transfer paper. Not all image transfer papers are created equal. So I found this one. It's Leslie Riley's Transfer Artist Paper, and it comes in a package of 18. It is a little pricey when you buy it in a package of 18. It's about $31 right now as of recording this video for 18. So it makes it like $1.75 a sheet. But if you kind of put it in the whole scheme of things, it does make it affordable when you're using like the drop cloth and all of that, and it's going to turn out really great. You can only print out on an inkjet printer, which most people have at home. So you could just print this out on your regular printer at home, and then you have this beautiful image. And you'll notice that it's all in reverse. So I've already done that for you. What we're going to want to do first is we're going to want to cut off a lot of the excess of this white and get it as close to our image as possible, and try to just get rid of as much of this excess as possible. I'm going to just use my regular iron this time around, and we're going to get it as hot as it can and remove the steam function. So it needs to be hot and dry for about 2 minutes. Very carefully press it on with a lot of pressure. It's going to take a little bit of arm muscle, and we are going to iron this on. Now, you definitely want to peel this off while it's still hot. So what you might want to do is pull up one corner and keep the iron on it, and just gradually move the iron and peel it back at the same time. That way it will pull off easy. And then you're left with this beautiful transferred image. This is so pretty. I love this. It's so cute. So we're gonna sew this pillow, and sewing is super easy. If you can drive a car, and even if you can't drive a car, you can sew, because I actually learned to sew at 8 years old, so I know that you can do this. This is the sewing machine that I recommend for beginners, and honestly, I've been sewing for decades now, and I love this machine. And what's great about it is you can actually control the speed right here, as well as having a lot of stitching options. It seems like it has hardly any problems. I just think this is a great machine. This is not sponsored, by the way. I just really like this machine. The first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna take our 2 back pieces, and then we're gonna sew a hem on one side, on the long side of both pieces. If you want to, you can pin this, but I've been sewing long enough that I feel like I don't need to do it for this hem part. To get started sewing, you just push on the pedal much like you would a gas pedal and start stitching away. So here we go. And then don't forget to back stitch. And then sew. Okay, so here's our pillow front. Isn't that cute? We're gonna lay this out flat, and then we are gonna take our 2 flaps, and this is how we're gonna create an envelope. And we are gonna take one piece and line up the corners, and on the top first, match up the corners. And then you take the bottom one and then you match up the corners. And then we are gonna clip it together with these handy clips. I love these so much easier and less poked things, and I'm not putting pins in my mouth, which I'm known for. But we're gonna use these clips. I ordered them off of Amazon and they are so much fun and they work really good. Then we literally sew around all the edges, backstitch. Cut off the corners, flip it out, and then we're gonna iron out the corners of it and get it nice and smooth, because I've got one little added element that it's gonna kind of make it look a little bit more high-end. So we're gonna start this on the bottom, but all we're gonna do now that we've got this ironed is just go all the way around, and I just am gonna line the edge of the presser foot up with the edge of this, and then make sure that the needle is set kind of on the left-hand side, and we're gonna create like a little border. And then just go to town. Woohoo! We love to sew. We're gonna stuff this and hope our measurements worked out good. You know, these type of pillowcases are a little forgiving, so we'll probably be okay. So this is like scrap fabric for me. For $3 to $4, you have an amazing, beautiful pillow cover that you can put over another one of your pillows. Super classy, super high end, and pennies on the dollar. I kind of love that. But isn't this a fun technique? And it's supposed to be color fast. It's supposed to go through the wash really well. Isn't this fun? Our next spring DIY is a Magnolia wreath. And if you've ever priced these out, they can get pretty expensive really fast. And so we're gonna make our own. We are going to use an 18-inch grapevine wreath that you can find in a lot of thrift stores or at any craft store for very inexpensive. Then I have some bushes of magnolia flowers and some magnolia leaves that I picked up from Hobby Lobby for $5 a bunch on sale. Then I have some random magnolia leaves that I picked up on an after Christmas clearance sale, and I used in an older magnolia wreath. Now we're gonna hot glue them into place in kind of a spiral fashion, but if a leaf pokes out here and there, it's totally fine. This is not rocket science. Literally all of us can do this, I promise. Then just poke in our magnolia flowers, and that's it. Super duper easy. I am displaying it on this wreath stand. If you're interested in how I made this, I will link that episode below because I think it's super cute. What do you think? Now, we spent less than $20 on our wreath, and if I do say so myself, I think it looks every bit as good as the $150 and $233 ones. What do you think? All right, so next up, you're gonna need an 8x12 piece of wood, very thin, you can see here, because we are going to make a fresh flower market sign for a hanging sign that we made at Christmas time. Now, I'm gonna give you a refresher on how we made this at Christmas. And so what we did is we used another one of those outdoor deck spindles. So they have two different sizes of these outdoor deck spindles. One is a little bit smaller, one's a little bit bigger, and then they have the newel posts, which are obviously really large. We took the middle sized one and it was like $3, and then I used a whole bunch of different scrap pieces of wood and put together kind of this hanging sign, almost kind of like a for sale sign, but like on a smaller scale, but and much cuter. But if you want to see the full tutorial, I will link that in the description box below. I go over exactly how to make these. I've had several of you actually make them and they've turned out amazing. I've been so impressed with them. And I promised more signs. So we're gonna make one that says Fresh Flower Market, and I found this SVG on Etsy, and I found that you can find so many designs off of Etsy, very inexpensive. They're professionally designed, ready to go, super easy. Now, if you haven't had the opportunity to invest in a Cricut machine yet, you can still get the SVG, download it, and maybe do a tracing technique. I found this one, I thought it was perfect, especially for the shape and size of ours. Then we're gonna go ahead and just paint out our entire sign, front and back, in a white chalk paint. And once that's dry, then we are gonna apply our stencil, and then we're gonna smooth it down. And then before we actually do the black chalk paint, what we're gonna do is take the original white color and paint over all of the edges. So when it bleeds the original color. This helps to create really crisp, clean lines, and it's awesome. And then once that's dry, we're gonna take some black paint, and I'm going to use chalk paint just because I feel like when I peel off my stencils, it peels off nicer, but feel free to use acrylic. I just feel like I have better luck with chalk paint, and that's why I use that. Then once that's dry, we're going to peel back our stencil and take it outside and drill some holes that line up with our hooks. Then we simply hook on our sign. Now, I really wanted to play up that fresh flower market idea, so I just added some florals and greenery that I had in my stash, and it is not affixed to the sign very good at all. I just kind of twisted the stems around things to kind of hold it in place. I want to be able to easily remove it when I am ready to change it out. But I'm really happy with the sign. I feel like this could get me well into the summer months, and this was super cheap for me to make. Now I have used this hanging sign for a couple of seasons. Now, I recently redid my living room. If you haven't seen that episode yet, it was so much fun to put together. I will link that below. But I did a whole bunch of pillows. Well, I have a ginormous sofa, and I have plenty of places to put pillows. So my next DIY is kind of an Easter themed pillow cover. And I ordered these off of Amazon, and I wanted to try out one of Cricut's new products, and that is the infusible ink. And what makes it a little different is instead of a vinyl that kind of like sits on top, it infuses the ink right into the fabric. So I bought this SVG for really inexpensive off of Etsy that says like Peter Cottontail Bead Company, and I just thought that that would look really cute on my sofa. We are going to cut this design out on it. Now, I've seen some recommendations to put more pressure on the settings when cutting this. I would not personally recommend this, but I did have a very fresh and sharp blade on my machine. When I originally tried and added more pressure, it cut all the way through. So I don't recommend that unless maybe you have a dull blade. Now on the screen, this infusible ink looks brown. It is black. So if you buy infusible ink and it shows up kind of a weird color, not what you were expecting, just know that it will change colors with heat. The other thing I would recommend is maybe going with a much simpler design than I did, because this is a little bit more complicated and a little bit more tricky. It did work out in the end, but the tiny nature of it did make it a bit more tedious. Another thing you need to know is that the fabric needs to be at least 60 to 65% polyester for this to work right. My pillow cover ended up being 100% polyester, so that's perfect for this. I set my easy press at 380 degrees for 40 seconds. Before I press this, I put in a piece of parchment paper in between. Now, I don't know if this was necessary or not, but I've never used the infusible ink before, and I was a little bit worried about the ink bleeding through. Then I also placed a piece of parchment paper on the top of our transfer. Then I press it with slight pressure for 40 seconds. Now, my design ended up kind of peeking out the edges because it was a little bit larger than my easy press. So towards the end, I flipped the direction the other way very carefully because you don't want to move the ink or it will smudge. But I was worried about scorching my fabric, so I didn't leave it down for very long in this direction. That was a mistake because the ink didn't take very well on the top and the bottom. But once I peeled it back, it was done, and that was does that. Also, when I first saw the heat transfer all crinkled up, I had a minor short-lived panic attack thinking I had ruined it because of the crinkled up appearance. I thought I just screwed it up. Once I lifted it back, I realized it was okay. So not flawless execution on this one, but you can't really tell, especially when I knife my pillow. I really love this infusible ink, and I know that I will be using this again in the future because it just has such a professional quality to it. But I love this classy little bunny pillow on my sofa. Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If so, here's 25 more spring DIY decor projects for you. And to all of my DIY Niners, I just want to remind you that you are more powerful than you know. We'll see you next time. Bye.